Kalispell area by Glacier National Park. I live by Yellowstone, the real one in Montana, Yellowstone National Park. Glacier's beautiful, but anyway, Kalispell, one of the preachers in Kalispell back in the late 90s was doing some mission work in Siberia, far eastern Russia. And he took a couple of the members, families, over there on one of his trips, and they saw the great need for the orphans. They were visiting orphans' homes and trying to do good things in the area, Khabarovsk and Barnaul. And at that time, they adopted some children, and then they helped some children get adopted, but they wanted to do so much more. They saw how great the need was, and Eastern Russia, Siberia area is more like a third world country in many ways, of course. And so they started Orphans Lifeline in Eastern Russia. And they came to all us churches in Montana, will you do an Orphan Sunday to help these orphan children? And so I had been preaching, I've preached locally for 30 years, and I was in Livingston, Montana, and my wife's hometown. We got married in that church in 1983 in that building, and in 98, I went back and was the preacher there, and so it was wonderful. I'm from outside of Toronto in Canada, so I've got I've gotten around a bit. But I met Kathy in the Adventures in Missions program back in 1981 at Sunset School of Preaching, and we went on a mission to Sydney, Australia. It seems like a lifetime ago. I just got to visit with my AIM coordinator. Don Riddle lives in Conway. And so I've seen him a couple times since 1982 when we came back. And this time his daughters were there. His daughters were 11 and 12 when we were there in the 80s, and now they're in their 50s, and the one has grandchildren. So it was they live in Australia. I haven't seen them since they were 11 and 12, so it was really, really fun to see them and get to know them a little bit. They're still in Australia. Still active in the church, which is great. But we met in AIM and did all that. We went back to Sunset. We went and did a church plant outside of Toronto originally, and then we went to Montana in 98. And when I was preaching there, I'd go over to Bozeman and the Family Christian Bookstore. We'd get some supplies, and they always had these the orphans there by the cashier. Now it slipped my mind. It's like World Vision, always, will you sponsor one of our kids? And I never did, but I always left feeling guilty. And I never thought of myself as a very compassionate person, really. I was a driven evangelist. I want to lead people to Christ, and, somebody else can take care of all that stuff. And it just seems like God was working on my heart, because I would say that I'd have never done this. If you'd asked me 20 years ago, if you'd have told me 20 years ago, you're going to be out speaking for orphans, I said, no, I'm not. That's not going to happen. And so obviously God was working on my heart. And so when they came to Livingston and said, hey, we've got this situation, we can help these orphans, we were all excited to help. And we started. And so 8 years ago, I transitioned into traveling and speaking for them. And so it's been just a real joy to participate in this ministry on that level now. We had supported them for many years, and I feel really blessed. For 8 years now, I've been traveling and speaking to churches, and I've spoken at 125 new churches the last 8 years. And you guys are new to me, but we thank you for being continual supporters of Orphans Lifeline. And it's been a great blessing that so many have joined together to do so much good. And so that's kind of a little intro. What I want to show you this morning is, well, my clicker didn't click. Will it work? Yeah, now it's going to work. That is my sermon. It's similar. It's really similar, but I don't have those. Those are for my sermon. But I've got a slide showing what's developed over the last, and if you read the newsletters or look on Facebook, and I want to encourage you as people that are helping this ministry, look at Facebook, because every day there's a new picture, new posting of something going on. We have around 800 children in our orphan homes that we fund and manage. We have now, just 2 years ago, we started doing widow care because of an evangelist in Nairobi, Kenya, outside of Nairobi. He was trained at Bear Valley School of Preaching online. He's a native Kenyan. And so he did the online studies, and he was an evangelist. He saw a great need for these widows in his area. And so he started his ministry called Acts of Charity. He started it. It's his NGO. And by the grace of God, we were able to start funding it. And so we're funding that ministry, which has really turned into, we now have around 200 widows with their children. I'm not sure the actual widow number, but 200 with the widows and their children that we're helping fund as well now in Kenya and in some of our homes in India. So yeah, that's weird. That should not, well, I'll just go with it. That shouldn't be on that, but. Is this the one that just says presentation?
Yeah, it says presentation.
Huh, I looked at it this morning. It didn't have, I wonder if I pulled the wrong one off. We'll see. So I've got, I was going to say I'm presenting all the time, but I'm usually organized. So, but 20 years ago, when they were visiting Russia, they saw this little baby in an orphan home. They said, they were holding babies, and they said, well, why is he sitting over there? They said, he's sitting over there because he's going to die. He's sitting over there basically to die. They're like, why? They said, we have no medicine for him, and there's nothing we can do for him. So they were just kind of, just minding him while they knew he was going to die. They went to town and got medicine and saved his life. And I have an adult picture of this boy. So, we don't help adopt children, but this is one that they helped get adopted back then. And so traveling around, seeing in Russia, they said they saw the cockroaches running around in the orphans' homes in the daylight. So that little girl has a cockroach bite on her face. And so the babies in some of those homes they would leave them in their little bassinet crib and with no diapers because they couldn't care for them. And so it was really a really bad situation that they experienced. And so just orphan homes that seemingly in Russia, their papers, identification papers, will have orphan on it for their whole life. And it's kind of frowned, like they're looked down on because they are an orphan. And so it's really a bad situation for them. And so, I had heard about kids living in the sewers in Russia, and that's what's going on there. And so as they traveled around and experiencing now over many years of pictures, this is the food, all the food they had for the month, at one of the homes. And you've seen pictures, I'm sure, of third world countries, kids like this that have no clothes, have no food. These 5 girls were picked up at our home in Haiti. And I'll show you some updated pictures of them. Fatan is an evangelist there in Haiti, and he's caring for a dozen children. And so here is, this is weird. I updated this, but I apologize. We have 21 homes in 8 countries, and the 9 represents Russia. I generally say 21 and 8 because the Russian work, and I try to make it clear, the Russian work, I think of it as a subsidy, because we don't have really any control over those homes. The Christians go out and buy things. They buy school supplies, they buy sports equipment, they buy books, they all get Bibles and things like that. But that's where the ministry started, that's what they were able to do, and we continue to do that. And I know there's some Christians in that area that help, but that's what we do. We have, like I said, 800 orphan children. I knew we had more than 800 because we started helping the widows, so I'd put 850 on this for my presentations, but last week I said I want a new number with the widows. And so I just updated this last week, and somehow I gave him the wrong slide, because it's 800 and 200. And so in that 200, there's a bunch of children, but they're widows' children. So I'll tell you more about that. Why are there so many orphans? It's war. It creates orphans. And so in the Ukraine, literally, we're going to have hundreds and thousands of orphans from that war. And this little boy saw his parents killed, and they chopped his leg off so he couldn't be a threat to them. And so these are gruesome things that happen in our world. And it's just mind-boggling and difficult for us to comprehend that people are like that. But the more and more that we learn about the underbelly of our own culture and this world, it's pretty ugly. And ugly stuff's happening. And so we can help some children. And so thankfully we're able to. Do you want to click that for me, please? Yeah, and so disease that we've eradicated in our country, or water conditions, meat markets that aren't real sanitary and fresh, outhouses. Now, I always put my hand up when I say, how many of us have used an outhouse, you know? I'll bet many of you have. And, but, you know, we don't really want elementary kids living like that. There's too much disease there, so we fix that. Why are there orphans? Well, drugs and alcohol. I wouldn't have even imagined that there was drugs and alcohol in third world countries. My daughter and her husband went and taught in a fly-in village in Kuskokwim, Alaska for a couple of years. You have to fly in from Anchorage. It's a couple-hour flight on a little small plane, and you stay there all year, and you teach the kids. And that village, you have to fly into it. In the summer, they can bring barges up that big river, but basically, it's a fly-in village. No alcohol or drugs are allowed. They're not allowed there. But what kind of problem do they have? Alcohol and drugs. And they can't feed their children. They live off the land. It's like they're very, very poor people, but they have alcohol and drug problem. And so evil finds people everywhere, sadly. And so some children are going to starve to death because their parents literally aren't going to care for them. And so there are many orphans like that we aid as well. And so, you know, feeling no hope and all alone. And these are pictures of children that would be coming into our home, and they take a picture of them, and you can see the fear in their eyes because they have no idea what they're going to get. They've never received much good in their life. And so it's just that stare in their eyes. And so this young man is an example here. I love this picture because that's when he came to the home. Here's after a couple of years of growing and being loved by Christian people. And so it's a joy to see that. And this is Widnadine. She's one of the little girls that was in that picture of 5 there that I said were picked up in Haiti. And Kathy, my wife, and I have sponsored her for the last 8 or 9 years now. And so we've seen if you sponsor a child, you get a new picture every 6 months. And so, you know, when I first started helping, I was like, I don't care if I have a picture, I just want to help somebody. But after, you know, 16 or 18 pictures of Widnadine, I kind of enjoy seeing that picture of her and seeing her develop and grow. And I know she got baptized last year. She's like 13 years old now. And so it's just really enjoyable, and you just really marvel at how God's working. And so we're just trying to bring awareness so that we can develop compassion. And I think that's sometimes our problem, maybe my problem when I was younger, ignoring the situation and trying to do the things that I thought were important when there are other important things too. And so that's what we're trying to bring to the forefront. And so our key elements are caring for their everyday needs, you know, getting them off the street in a safe place, getting them food, medical treatment, whatever they need, and provide a private education. And if you didn't know that, all of these children are in private education. And so whether it's on the facilities where they live, or teachers come in or they go out, they have a private education. And that means that they'll be able to go on to higher learning. And so this is one of our real main points, is to make sure that these children can be a blessing to their culture. And, this is a cost. It's about $40 a month on average to get a child a private education in these third world countries. Now, my 3 grandsons are in a private education in Seattle, Washington, because my kids didn't want them in the public school system, and I don't either in Seattle. They're in a suburb, but still. It's a lot more than $40 a month per child. So it's amazing, our dollar goes so far, and the costs are so much lower. But I'll show you pictures of young people that are in college now. And to show them God's love and lead them to Christ I say number 3 is number 1 to me, but we have to feed them and teach them to read so we can teach them about God. It's long-term missions. And so how can we help? We save them off the streets from starvation and abuse, and to see their smiling faces is a great joy. They get whatever, we supply all their needs: medical care, dental care, eye care, medicine cabinets with medicine in them, and provide a private education. And so to see these kids all learning and growing in their schools is just a joy. And you'll note that they're all in uniforms. And so, outside of North America, I'm from Canada, they don't wear uniforms in Canada either, but seems like everywhere else they do. And when we were missionaries in Australia, all the kids had their uniforms on, and it's quite cute, but we just can't seem to pull that off in America. In India, these different homes, to see all these kids studying and growing instead of being on the streets searching for food to survive and not learning much. And so Life of Favor here, I thought this was a cool situation because these kids are learning to make their own sandals. And so that's kind of awesome. So they're learning life skills that will be productive to them in their life's future. And so most of our homes all have some kind of gardening going on. And this is in Russia. I know there's a lot of gardening in Russia because they don't know when they're going to get money from Moscow in those homes out there. And so they have to do a lot to supply their own needs. Safe Home in Liberia, we started helping Safe Home about 5 years ago. Ron Popberg is a World Bible School representative, and he travels to Africa at least 4 times a year normally, under normal circumstances. Of course, there was a couple of years there where he didn't get to go, 2 or 3 years, but he had helped John Travis start this orphan home. He met John Travis, a local Liberian, in a refugee camp in Ghana because the civil wars that were in Sierra Leone and Liberia. And so he was visiting, and Ron goes over to meet with the regional representatives of World Bible School and encourage them and update them. And so Ron was in school with me at Sunset School of Preaching back in 1983. And he's been working for World Bible School for, I think, 20 years now. And so it's been really awesome to connect with him again. Ron told me, World Bible School, it's something that's been around forever. Ron wants to lead people to Christ. He said, if there was a group in the churches of Christ leading more people to the Lord, I'd be working with them. He said, World Bible School is still doing a phenomenal ministry in reaching people for the Lord in these countries. And so they have quite a network in these countries. And this property here in Liberia was donated to the Churches of Christ by the government way back. I don't know. I know in the 70s that there were Churches of Christ doctors and nurses going there. It was a clinic. So the government donated the land to the Churches of Christ in that area if they would have a clinic or a school or orphan home or something, right? And so all of that got shut down because of the Civil War. And when John Travis got back from when he's in Ghana, he told Ron, he said, if I ever get back home, I want to have an orphanage for all these children. Because of the Civil War, there were a lot of children without parents. And so Ron said to me, he said, you know long sleeve, short sleeve? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, I said, well, I've got some of those shirts, but he said, well, you need to watch Blood Diamonds. And I said, oh, I remember that movie. I didn't want to watch it. He said, you need to watch it because it's real. And my wife and I watched it, and it is kind of rough. But it's a real story about what happened in Liberia. And the thing that really stood out to me is they were training these little kids to kill people, little kids. They trained them with their machine guns. They would train them shooting people with baits over there. It was terrible. And they would go into a village and just be shooting it up. And they would round up everybody. And the little boys they took to train to be killers. The good strong men they took to work in their mines and things. The old men they found a big block in town and they said, do you want a long sleeve or short sleeve? And they whacked them off at the wrist or the elbow. Literally, true story. So that they wouldn't be a threat to them. So it's unbelievable. It's really what happened. And so there were a lot of orphans from that Civil War in Liberia and Sierra Leone. So John got back and Ron helped him start this orphan home. Ron said he slept on the floor, on the ground, with a baby beside him the first night John had his orphan home. And so we've got 50 to 60 kids there that he's raising and taking care of and moving along to, we've got some of those in college now, and because he's had this for 20 years probably. We just started funding it five or so years ago. But it's a great place, and they've done a phenomenal job. Ron is up there on your left, yeah, in the middle there. He's always trying to think of some ingenious way for them to take care of themselves better, and they had a year-round spring. So he said, why don't we have rice paddies? So the workers and kids dug little rice paddy ponds, you can see. And so a couple years later, he's like, we need protein. Let's dig them deeper, and we can have fish. We can raise fish. And so they dug the ponds deeper, and they're raising fish so they can have protein. And so the one thing that is extremely short of for people in third world countries is protein. And it's hard for them to get protein. And he told me that children just won't get protein for days on end if they're not being cared for. And so our children, you can be confident that the children we're helping with your funds are getting protein every day, and they're growing healthy and strong. And so it's a joy to know that. All kinds of animal husbandry that they utilize, chickens or pigs or things to teach the kids and help them. Now, this is a couple of pictures of two boys that have gone to university from Safe Home. Elijah there grew up at the home, and he's studying electrical engineering. And Augustus is studying agriculture. I know Ron told me that a lot of the kids, a number of the kids at Safe Home have gone and got education and have come back and helped. He said that at least one or two of their teachers are kids that grew up there. And I think a bookkeeper that's helping John grew up there. They went and got training, and they're helping. And so it's a joy to know that. And so we're attempting to lead them all to Christ, every single one. But not every single one will be a faithful Christian. Somebody asked me one time, well, are they all Christians, literally? And I was like, well, I don't think so. Are all of our kids Christians in America? Sadly, evil is everywhere, and it destroys some people. And so, but I do believe that we're experiencing a much higher percentage of faithfulness because these kids know why they're alive. literally, because Christians in America are funding their life. And so all across the third world countries like India and Safe Home, they're studying God's Word. They're learning the story of God and Jesus and the salvation we can have through him. When I started serving 8 years ago, I said, I want to know how much they're studying the Bible. You know, how much are they teaching them the Bible? Do they have a class? They study the Bible a lot, I was told. I said, yeah, how much though? Well, really a lot. I said, I want to know. So they sent emails to all the managers and came back with like 3 hours. They probably have a Bible class every day in their studies, like any Christian school would, and devotional when they get up. And it's kind of, the joy sometimes of having a bunch of Christians together. We have Yellowstone Bible Camp up in Montana, and I'm sure you've got Bible camps down here. And I've managed the middle school group for over 20 years now. I've been working at the middle school age. And some of my team leaders are over here at Harding. I'm going to get to see the next couple days that 4 of them are freshmen at Harding now that I had for team leaders at camp this last summer. But when you're at camp, you get up in the morning and you have a Bible reading, you give thanks to God for the day, you have a Bible class, and there's just something special about that. And to extend that, I think that's kind of the joy of having our Christian universities. And not everybody can go to a Christian university. But I've heard it said for kids in Montana, it's like going to Bible school, like Bible camp. Going to Christian college, they come down. It's like being at Bible camp, where you get to study the Bible every day. You get to go to the morning devotional, and so they are refreshed by that experience. And so that, I think it's similar at these homes, where it's just that way. That's the way things are happening. We're talking about God. We're studying about God. Yeah, we're learning math and science and English, but it's all because of God. It's like being at a Christian school, but you live there. And so it's a joy to see that. Here is Eugene Bekoff signing Bibles in Russia. And so all the kids in Russia do get a Bible, which gives them the opportunity to learn about the Lord. If we sponsor kids, they all get a Bible with our name in it. Widnadine has a Bible that has Calvin and Kathy in it, and just a little brief note. And so every 6 months we get a note from Widnadine with her picture. She'll have a little note on it. Well, they have her write a note and it gets sent, and it's a process. But it's translated, I guess. I don't think they speak English in Haiti, do they? And so Liberia speaks English. I don't know, I didn't know that, but just so you know, they speak English there. So if you want to go to Liberia, they speak English. It's not hard. So that's kind of interesting. But so all of our communication has to be translated, and but they get something with their sponsor's name. Now, when we sponsor a child, I'm going to say it now because I'll forget later. If we sponsor a child, it's $100 a month. But if we sponsor a child, that child doesn't get anything that the other children don't get. That is a specific gift that goes to that home. And so I'm the treasurer for Yellowstone Bible Camp that we have in Montana. So right now we're building a bridge at our camp because it got washed out because of the floods last year. And so some people send donations to Yellowstone Bible Camp. Well, that goes in the general fund. I've received checks for Yellowstone Bible Camp Bridge Fund. Well, that can't go in the general fund. Whether I want to put it there or not, that would not be ethical. It's not right. So it has to go in the Bridge Fund. And so when my donation goes to Orphans Lifeline, it has to go in the Hope Family Home where Widnadine is. It's a specific gift. So it guarantees that home has that money. And so that's how they've set it up. so that they're really cognizant of children not getting something another child doesn't have. And so if they get requests sometimes, oh, it's Winnedine's birthday, I want to send her a gift. Well, that would be nice, but they don't do that. It's like, okay, well, if you want to give everybody there a gift, they can all celebrate together. So they're really careful about, and you can only imagine children that have no parents, that have the difficulties of trying to help them grow in that community. And so, but they do have a Bible, which is awesome. And to see these kids, many of them turning their life over to the Lord, is a joy. And so if you look at our Facebook page, you'll see some of those things. And if you sponsor a home, say like my wife and I sponsor Winnedine, so it's Hope Family Home, you can get on that home's Facebook page also and see more pictures. And so there's lots available in that way, but just the regular page has a lot of pictures about the ministry. And I just put some pictures in like this. This is literally a Facebook posting that Lori in the office put on the page one day. And I just saw that little girl with those nice clothes on. And I thought, isn't it, it's just a joy to know that we're creating that environment for that child. You know, she's not in rags. She's in clothes that I would be happy, I'd be thrilled for my granddaughters to wear those clothes, you know? And so that makes me really happy that they're being cared for to that level. And here in Liberia, we made some improvements the last couple of years. They needed some more school buildings. Now, these pictures show them building their own cement blocks. They're making their cement blocks and building the building. And so it's kind of amazing. Maybe some of you have done that. I never thought of us building our own cement blocks, but pretty remarkable. That property was a clinic, you know, back in the 70s. And so we just, a couple years ago, got the clinic up and running again. So there's a clinic on that property as well. And there's medical staff there to vaccinate our children and community children. And so, and we teach the children there. There's a school on property at Liberia. We also teach children that are in the community, some of them that pay a small amount for their children to come to the school there. And so they're trying to bless their community that way. Learning Estate in India lost their home. They were leasing a property, and they were having to move, and he couldn't find property, and so a Christian brother gave some property to him to run this home. And so we funded the building of this new home that they live in. And you can see, I found it really interesting. They're bricking the walls, and then they obviously stucco them up there. So it's just all the different modes of construction. I was talking to somebody who did construction. It's different modes all over the country and world of building. But they came up with a beautiful home for all these kids, and that's the finished home in the background with nice colors on it, and it looks beautiful, finished. But Orphans Lifeline funded that. We don't own it. We don't own anything. So remember, everything that all these homes are local Christians that had a desire to care for children. And so that's who you want. Wouldn't it be nice if we could go into a country and say, hey, I want to have an orphan home in this town over here. Who would like for me to pay you so you could care for some children? Well, lots of people going to put their hand up as soon as they hear we're going to pay them to take care of children. But it doesn't mean they'll take good care of the children. That's just the truth. And so what they've done is found people who, that's their passion, is to care for children. They love these children. And so we're just coming alongside and helping them do it really well. And so to see them living in these conditions and having property like that. So they own it all. we're just funding the ministry and making sure it's done right. We fund and manage. So there's an immense amount of reporting that goes on to make sure everything's being done appropriately. And so, there's reports on who's getting paid and all of these things. When we're building buildings like that, they don't just send them, oh, here's $20,000 to build the building. They will send them, literally, this is true, they'll send them, how much money is it to get the foundation in? Oh, $1,000? Here's $1,000. Send us pictures of the foundation. And then how much money is it to put the walls up and the roof on? Oh, $4,000. Here's that money. Now, do it. Now send us pictures of it, just to help people be responsible and accountable. And so it's really, like I say, why do we have locks on our doors? Well, we have locks on our doors for honest people, right? Really. Because dishonest people don't care if there's locks on the doors. Evil people don't care if there's locks. They're going in anyway. So we lock things up to help me be responsible and honest, to help one another. My son manages a restaurant in Montana, and they were keeping the office door unlocked. And it's like, you need to lock the door. Well, nobody's going to take anything. Well, no, that nobody is going to take anything until they do, no, they don't want to, but when you put a few $100s on the table right there and they're walking by, it's a lot of temptation. And so, literally, we help one another in ways like that to be honest and responsible and good. And so that's what we're trying to help them learn. In some of these countries, especially Russia, they grow up learning the only way to survive is to lie, cheat, and steal. That's the truth. I was talking independently years ago. I was talking to a guy in Livingston, Montana I played tennis with, and he was a highfalutin architect and had a big business, and he had been to Russia. And he was over there with some government officials for some reason. And he said, I got one of the guys off the side, and I said, what would it be like to have a business here in Russia? He said, well, first of all, you'd have to find an honest Russian. And he said, you're going to have a hard time finding one because they've been trained to lie, cheat, and steal to survive. And so it's like that a lot in the world out there. And so we're having to help people. You have to be a little more vigilant in those countries. And it's not to put them down, it's just the culture that they grew up in. And so this is the quality of that home, the kids that are there at Learning Estate. It's kind of just a joy to see them all. This is a young lady that grew up there, and she's a nurse now. And this picture here was in the newsletter a while back, and I said, I want to know, it just had a picture of these girls and said, these young ladies came back to visit, the manager at the home. And I said, I want to know what they're doing. I need to know what they're doing because that's the real story. So you can see college, married, college, nurse, mother. And so part of what we're doing is ending the cycle of orphans. And if you can think of it like any addiction, we have to break the cycle. And so typically children do, sadly, we do what our parents did in so many ways. And I'm not putting my parents down or your parents down. I mean, there's just typically bad characteristics passed down through generations. And alcoholism is one of those, maybe drug addiction, maybe anger, that we grow up seeing a lot of anger and we express a lot of anger. All of those things pass along. And so we got to break the cycle. Jesus helps us break the cycle. And that's what's helping break the cycle for these young people, is knowing Jesus. And acts of charity that I mentioned, Harrison started this we started helping him a few years back, and that's Harrison in the red shirt, and we're building homes for the widows, and we can build a home for $3,500, And so people have donated. We've got, I think, at least 12 homes built, and we've got some funding, and we're continuing to, receive funds for homes for $3,500, a home that gives them a nice clean place instead of those mud huts that they were living in. And so that when we fund these widows, it means that they get to stay home with their children instead of leaving their children all week and going into the city and working, trying to make enough money to survive. Their kids have nobody caring for them. They're not getting educated. They don't get any food until mom comes home. And so this situation is helping her be able to raise those children. Instead of them all ending up in an orphan home, they still have their mom. We were reaching some of them and helping them before they're orphans. And that's what this is all about, making sure that mom can care for the kids and help them grow. And so this is little Zach Jones that I said he's an adult. He just graduated from Oklahoma Christian University, the little baby that was set aside to die. I met him and I said, "You are 1 in a million, because this just doesn't happen." And he's doing extremely well. I don't know if you know, a number of the kids that are adopted from Russia don't do real well in America. They struggle emotionally because of the abuse that they had when they were little. And so it's a real challenge. It's really difficult for them. He is a great success story. His grandpa's an elder in the church in Oklahoma City, and has done, it's just a joy to see him. And we're not getting children adopted, we are transforming children's lives. And here's the picture that had Widnadines, the middle one in the green there at the top, when they picked those girls up. And here she is with that group right there in 2013, and here they are in 2023. And so those are the kids that Faton's been caring for all these years. Many churches, around 300, depends on the year, with Orphan Sunday, or, that are helping us around the country. And the advertising in the Christian Chronicle has been a real blessing and help as well. So this will just show you the numbers that it takes to care for a child. And so you can see there, $10 can feed a child, $20 buys their clothes, $30 a safe and secure home, $40 private education. It's $100. And so that's why they came up with sponsoring a child at $100 a month. And that has been a real blessing to the ministry, because we have around 250 children sponsored in that way now, which has provided us with a lot of monthly income to keep the work going during the year and not just be dependent on Orphan Sunday, which they were in the early years. And so this has really helped immensely, and it's been a joy. And some churches will sponsor a child. I've got a lot of individuals that have sponsored a child. I've got somebody that I happen to know that's done really well, and they sponsor 6 children. And so, not many of us can do that, but thank the Lord, there's people that can, and they have a heart to do things like that. And so, thank you so much for what you guys are doing and have done to help this ministry. Thanks for your time.